Good morning. We're going to talk this morning about the Bedini motor. You know, this is one of the most misunderstood things that I've ever seen. Does it create more power going out than what comes in? Why are you depleting the battery all the time when you're using the motor if it's supposed to generate power more than what it takes in? The understanding here is in the multiple of batteries you could charge with it at the end. So what are you doing? You're basically making a pulse motor. You're making this thing where it tries to defeat Lenz's law. You're doing it by using magnets that are not neodymium, the regular ceramic magnets, and they're going to spin around a wheel which is aluminum. And as it does this, you're going to take this core of wire, generally 2 wires. Sometimes you can add a third in there. You got to wrap them together and then wind the wheel. You're going to have a trigger switch, and then you're going to have the power wire. It goes in, it goes through a MOSFET. It does a spike in there. That's a back EMF spike. That's where your energy is coming from. The rest of it is return to sender, so return to recharge the battery. But when it does that, it splits off a certain amount of energy in the negative area. It goes into a battery, and then it charges it. Now, you could still use the energy coming off of this thing. What is going on when you charge the battery? You have a negative charge that goes in it, so it's not a positive charge, so it reacts differently. You're going in through the voltage side of the battery, not the positive side. So you're going to be stuffing energy inside this thing. For those of you who like to see energy as electrons and holes in this thing, the holes themselves will start to fill up with energy inside of them. In the battery, you have open holes in there. All those open holes will start to fill up with energy. That right there is your dielectric energy. It's a bit different than the positive. Positive, mostly a chemical process that pushes out amps. So as you charge this in reverse, you change the battery. You inevitably have to. The only way to get it out of there is to completely deplete the entire battery and then restart from the beginning. So where does the over unity come from in this motor? It's how many batteries can you charge at once? You see, one Bedini motor can charge 18 batteries. How impressive is that? You're depleting one. There's no question in that. It's going to take some time to deplete it. You have usable power coming out of it, and you're recharging more batteries than what you're using. You have 2 batteries in the system, one charged at all time, one powering at all time. You have chargeable batteries, though. They can go up to 18 of them. Even if you say, okay, we're only going to do 8, let's just do 8. That's still charging all those at the same time you're depleting one. That's a great ratio, 1 to 8. I deplete one, I can fill up 8. What does that mean? Well, if I got 8 more Bedini motors, then I have a multiple going on. I now have 8 to run. Now I can charge another 8 on top of every one of those 8. You see, the multiples goes fast in this thing. So do you get more? Yes. What's the problem with it? It's not in practical use today because negative energy is not well understood. It changes the battery. It no longer allows it to do everything it's supposed to do properly. You're still going to get positive power out of it for a while. You're only going to be able to charge it in negative because you reverse the understanding of the battery. Batteries go on memory. They run on either positive, push it out with amps, or negative, where they pull it through. You're in Bedini style, so you're pulling it through, and negative. Again, the biggest part is now where the holes are in there, you get dielectric fields going on in your battery. That's what's stopping it from charging the correct way through the amperage side. Now that you know that, what's the advantage of it? Well, the battery, number one, is the wrong configuration for this motor type. Let's just understand that out front. You need a battery that has to have aluminum in it in order to get this, which would be more like a capacitor. Every capacitor that fills up charges slowly, and it's able to convert negative energy into usable energy. Doing that capacitance and controlling the amount coming out into a battery would charge it normally. But it even shows as soon as you hit the screwdriver over the top two posts on the cap has usable power. There was another inventor that invented the Geo Metro that runs on electricity. He invented a battery to go with it. Now, this wasn't a conventional battery. It's not all about the it's not all about the lead and acid. This battery worked as a fast draw capacitor. So what do I mean by that? It basically filled up really fast and could discharge the capacitance very fast. You would say, well, it's a capacitor. It's not a battery, it's a capacitor. Well, in that I definitely agree, but they classified it as a battery. What was impressive about it was how fast it took in the energy and how fast it dissipated it out. It could run normally, putting out 12 volts, not a problem, but it could fill within a minute or two. Now, think about this. Anytime you run your Tesla coil and you try to pull power out of it and convert it, you have to go through a process of putting it through capacitors. You have to use aluminum capacitors in there in order to do it. They're most effective, but it takes a while to charge them. You cannot usually control untamed voltage very well. You can bridge rectify it. It does help. It'll slow it down a little bit, but it's a high speed, high voltage charge is what you're getting. You're going to need to put capacitance in it. Now, what makes more sense is capacitance on one side of a battery while you have charge on the other. That's what I think that they did in this battery. Why is that so important? Because you have to convert energy correctly. You can't just take it and just use it right away, because the energy that comes out in a negative high voltage spike is not necessarily usable energy at all times. You're going to miss 80% of it trying to convert it. I've done this quite a few times. I've taken negative energy spikes. I've taken Tesla coil energy. I've taken potential energy. All of it must be converted the same way. You're getting a high frequency energy. You need to change that to a low frequency, high amp energy. In order to do that, you must again put it through the aluminum capacitors. You say, well, why do you always say aluminum? Why is that? It's because of how the high voltage is built in most systems. If you take aluminum and you take plastic and aluminum plastic and do that combination and you roll them, you make what's known as a high voltage capacitor. It basically takes all your amperage and strips it out because it doesn't allow it to build a magnetic field in it. So the voltage fields will continuously processes through the whole thing. So what are you doing in reverse? You're doing the same thing in reverse, except for this time in the actual capacitors, they're a little bit different in how they're configured. So they allow for that energy to build up and build up and build up and give you the correct amperage coming out. It takes a long time. Sometimes when you do this, it could take you up to 10 to 15 minutes just to get a decent enough charge to run a DC motor. It could be very small or very big, and it's irrelevant to the capacitor. It could take you about 10 minutes to charge that just to get it to use it. That's not very practical. You want this thing to charge in about a minute. Here's some misunderstanding people don't understand when they get into this stuff. Your capacitor value is not the same value you're going to need when it comes to very fast high voltage. So you say, man, I need 400 volts and I need to make sure that my capacitor does that. Well, that's going to be a very slow charge. You go, okay, well, what if I bring down the voltage. Can you do that? Well, yeah, because the numbers aren't necessarily reflecting what you need. It all has to do with the speed of charge. So if you go, okay, I need a 100-volt capacitor, then how fast is it going to charge? Well, it's going to charge much faster. You put a lot of those in line with each other, they're going to charge very fast. Think about that. You had to lower the voltage amount, even though your voltage amount that you're putting into it is going to be 30 to 60,000 volts with almost no amps. There's a conversion that happens. It's just like a transformer has a conversion to it. If you have more voltage in it and less amperage, you can convert to get more amperage out of it by changing the wire size. This works in the same way. So it's not out of the realm of norm, just you got to understand the capacitance themselves. You need to go to a lower amount so they fast charge right away, so they can discharge right away into a bigger capacitance area. And then anything that comes out of that capacitance must be either put into the battery or put into a duty cycle to run something again. That's how you loop something. There's different rules for this stuff. That's why that battery that gentleman made was so impressive. It filled up quickly with negative energy, and then it was able to put out regular positive energy out of it rapidly. The Bedini motor would be perfect for this. It would be the perfect way to run it. That's how that guy got that little Geo Metro to run. He used other tricks, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to the battery and the technology you want to do it, sometimes regular batteries suck. Yeah, he probably did this conversion a lot. It was probably used to it. He probably ran thousands and thousands of charges and discharges on it and could run a normal battery. But the one he invented after that was so much better. The Bedini motor is useful. It teaches you about negative electricity. It teaches you about a high voltage spike. It teaches you about how much negative energy you can use in a system. You see, negative energy is much different than positive energy. We're so used to pushing amps through a system in batteries that we don't even know much about the negative side of the battery. That's a failure on our part. The negative side of the battery doesn't work like positive side. The positive side pushes out the energy and forces amps through your system in order to run things. The negative side is a draw system. It pulls things through it. It needs something on the other side that can pull the energy. It has to have a load on it. Once you have a load on it, you can pull the energy through the system. If you've watched this podcast before, we talked about Daniel and exactly how he did it. It's the same understanding. It's negative energy, so you have to pull it through with a load. Now, you can pull it through with a draw, which basically means you're going to hook up a light or a neon light, and it's going to pull that energy through it. But that negative spike is different. It feeds off the positive spike. How does that work? There's two sides to every way of electricity, just like there's two sides to every coin and everything else in life. One pushes it, one pulls it. They're opposites. This is the opposites in your energy. The high voltage spikes are very cold in nature. Voltage doesn't have any resistance in it. Amps have all the resistance in the world in it. Two sides of the same coin on the same scale on a DC system. You can convert it by just changing the frequency of it, and it'll convert. You're going to need to know this if you go into a Bedini motor. Bedini motors are basically all about this. If you look at it conventionally, and the way conventional energy runs through the positive, you'll never understand the motor. That a lot of over unity systems run on negative energy. They don't run on positive. This is what people have trouble with. What's a way to understand this a little better? Your NPN transistor is positive energy. It pushes amperage to the system. It heats up. It's why you can only go so fast in your computer right now, because all of your transistors or MOSFETs are NPNs. If they were PNP, it would run differently. You're pulling the negative to the system. You're pulling the voltage to the system instead of pushing the amperage. When you do this, the system stays colder. As a matter of fact, one of the side effects of a PNP, if you change the resistance on it well enough, you can get this thing to go really cold. What does that do? It just increases efficiency of how things run. That's why negative energy is attractive in what you're doing, because it's cooling down everything. Now, without the hysteresis going on in the heat, you now have something that's going to work even better than you think it is. It's going to be the way you want it to be in pulling out energy in a very low system of energy, where you have ceramic magnets, not neodymiums, but ceramic magnets going around one spot in the schoolgirl circuit. It's basically turning it and pulling the negative energy out. Those spikes right there are capturable. You can take the energy. They're not free. I don't ever let somebody tell you they're free. You still paid for the negative as well as a positive, but in this case, you didn't do a Steinmetz and throw it into the ground and get rid of it. You actually captured it. That's the point. Capture it's not usable. You just got to convert it. You can see it as a dirty AC. You can see it as potential. You can see it as negative electricity. You can see it as cold energy. All of those things are exactly the same. It's a high voltage charge with very little amps that has to be converted in a very specific way. They all pull towards the draw. So if you build a cap bank, you're going to have to put some kind of a neon light over the cap bank in order for it to pull to the cap bank. Otherwise, it won't pull. It will not pull to the system. By the way, this is how you know that an PNP transistor, you can take out the resistor and put in a neon light, because it's operating in the same fashion. You're converting energy at that point. You say, well, PNP, they have to have a lower voltage that goes into it, and you put a resistor in there to get it. Well, yeah, because the resistor heats up in a DC system. What does that mean? It means the amperage goes up and the voltage goes down, which means it'll be able to turn on the circuit. Well, if you know that, you can then take a neon light and do it the same way. Not everything has to be exactly how they say it is. You just have to understand how to manipulate the system. Morning, John. When you get into negative energy, it's completely different than positive. If you use the rules of positive energy in a negative system, you'll fail. How do you know you got a negative energy system? There won't be any resistors in it. There'll be a lot of coils in it. Things will look differently. The positive and negative will be backwards to you in the system. Once you see that, you should identify it right away as a negative energy circuit and start running it as the negative is pulling through the system. Even if they're NPNs instead of PNPs, there's something else going on in there that converts it. Can an NPN run that way? Yes, it can. You just have to know how to do it. A lot of this energy is, how do I say, it's an energy that builds out in atmosphere. So just like your Tesla coil does, it builds out energy in atmosphere. Okay. Same thing with high voltage. It's no longer contained on the wire itself. It can build it out like a spark. Once you know that you're no longer dealing with the electrons and the holes in the system. You're now dealing with points of saturation. Base all around instead of base, normal, in your transistor or your MOSFET are now difference of understanding. You're now just saturating the field in order for it to go from one side to the next. You're not moving electrons to the holes anymore. Now you're dealing with field saturation because you're using a dielectric to do it. Dielectric is your high voltage field. That's pretty easy. Simon's told you the same thing, told you what it was. Now that you understand that, Bedini should be a lot easier. You're running in negative, you're not running in positive. The only part of the positive loops back to run the system. Your negative in the system goes to fill capacitance banks or other batteries. When we say battery, it's kind of a bad word when you say over unity in battery. And a lot of people think this way. It's a chemical conversion, is the way you have to see it. It doesn't matter if the batteries are junk. It's the chemical conversion in the battery. That's what you need. That's what allows you to pull in that negative energy and convert it. You need a chemical reaction. That's why some capacitors work better than others. You have a little bit of a chemical reaction. You have things that work in high voltage versus things that work in low voltage. I'll tell you a little bit. You could take a Tesla coil and you can try to put it into regular capacitors and it won't work for anything. They won't charge, they won't fill up no matter what the level is. Then you go put them on the positive side, they fill up just fine. It's like it's not recognizing what's going on. It has a block to it. But when you get to the aluminum capacitors, they work in the correct fashion. There's other ways to do it. There's certain metals that you can put in there and dope it. And once you do that, then the energy will actually transfer faster and better. When you listen to the guy who built the water smacker, he's dealing with negative electricity. And he will tell you out front that there's better capacitors and better diodes and everything else that works with negative electricity. They use different metals in them. Now that we understand that, all these systems should start to become easy. Where do you want to change something? See, you get into the Bedini, you go into negative energy. That's fine. That's a simple understanding of it. How do you go beyond that? You have to be able to convert the energy on the spot. You don't want to be able to do it in a capacitor all the time. Oh, this will sound strange, but high voltage leaching is how you do it. And you could basically take your negative energy or your positive energy and convert it over to negative energy and use your Tesla coil to do it. As long as they're in an open system where you have a panel that you can get anything to saturate over to the next. What does that mean? It basically works like an antenna on the Tesla coil. It goes out to the positive and negative sides of your DC system, and it's able to saturate that. Now it's going to change the frequency. It's also going to change the energy level. And that's how you would do that. It's pretty interesting how different energies work and how it can amplify the other ones. Bedini built more than just a school girl circuit. He built several of them. He also built amplifiers in his life. So he understood resonance and the factors of resonance. He showed it in several of his videos. Energies and packets. So it goes closed, open, closed as it goes, just like this. He said that's where you hide the information. Why is that? Because energy itself is not a sine wave. He said, well, what is it? It rotates around the wire. Doesn't go in the wire, but rotates around it. Why is that part important? Because your packets that you see like this are not really what that is. You're actually building a double helix. When you build a double helix, you can hide the information inside, just like DNA. That's what he's telling you. Resonance is how you get there. It's two frequencies that are matched that do work together, constantly in a chase around each other, constantly in a chase around each other. They're doing work. As soon as they do work, you have energy. You have to see it different. Everybody sees it on the oscilloscope, but we sell oscilloscopes for 3D so you can see it properly. Once you see it properly, it makes all the sense in the world. Not a problem. You get into something like this, well, how else can you pull the energy? Well, since you know it's the same thing as you're pulling, a chronomotor or something like that, you can also use something from Tesla and his radiant energy. It's the ground. It's the energy from the sky. It's a capacitor that you can use to pull out energy. It's an open air capacitor. It's another way to do it. Also, in a negative energy system, you want to have it grounded to earth, not your wall ground, earth. There's a difference in the two. The wall ground has a lot of dirty energy in it because there's a lot of frequency in there. 60 megahertz, or excuse me, 60 hertz, not megahertz, that'd be terrible. 60 hertz, they're in there a lot. It confuses the energy a little bit. It tries to adjust it. Going to regular earth gives you a better signal out of it. You can pull more energy out of it. Remember, it's a negative, so it's on a draw system. So grounding it increases the energy because it gave it a load. So it's able to pull towards that load. That's what you're looking for. So you want to earth ground it. Anytime it says it in there. Crazy, huh? Wouldn't think it'd be that important, but it is. A lot of special stuff happens in the ground that we don't realize. You can pull energy right out of it. It's going to come out in negative. Not going to come out in positive. You'll have to convert. Oh, man. A lot of this stuff, when you get to dealing in something with Bedini style and that negative energy spike, what do you want to do? Well, you want to pull that separately out. So if you don't have a cap bank on the other side, it's going to make it kind of difficult. Now, what do you have to do? If you just wanted to run, you just have a neon light over there and a cap bank and it'll pull the energy to it. Okay? Run the system exactly like he says it. Nothing special going on here. It'll work. You want to be able to change this thing, though, and get it to perform even better. Well, that's when you get into system balancing. You want to balance the input and the output. So the capacitance going in, the capacitance coming out. Once you balance that, your system and your energy should run smoother. You're no longer getting a lot of resistance in your system. Resistance is what creates heat, it creates hysteresis, and it makes it ruin your system, and it's all energy loss, just loss, completely gone out of your system. So you want to balance capacitance banks. You want to be able to adjust the capacitor on the backside in order for the front side to work properly. Once you balance that, there's less heat in the system. It then runs smoother, and every time it runs smoother, you get more usable energy out of it. The conversions aren't equal, just so we understand each other. The energy spike, and you say the positive, if you add them together, would it give you the same amount going into the back end of the battery? No. Why? Because the energy spikes themselves are different, and you can actually get more of it if you know how to ground it and cap bank it the correct way. You'll get more than what you thought you were going to get. So you could pull an over unity effect right there. So how do you know that? Well, we can run a Tesla coil that acts as a negative energy pump and put something down the center of it, connect that into earth ground, and we're going to pull energy right out of it. If you put a capacitor bank in between it, it fills a capacitor bank. All you did is use it as a negative energy pump to pull it out of the ground. fairly simple to do, brings in a lot more energy. See, once you understand what kind of energy you're working with, you're doing just fine. Negative energy, radiant energy, high voltage energy, all potential, it all converts the same. Tesla coil energy converts the same. You have to have the correct capacitance to pull it back in. The battery will change if you put it into there. Both will do it. You're going to be converting your battery over to something different than what it normally is. All good. Not really a problem. Matter of fact, you probably want several of those things around that work on the negative side, because then you get into other projects and they start to work better. You can go into your rodent coil. If you run the negative energy through your rodent coil, it works 10 times better than it does with positive. As soon as you put positive energy through your rodent coil, it starts to heat. You start to lose a lot of energy. You say, well, then we'll just reduce the wire size and we'll put less amperage in it. Well, yeah, that's one way. That way it will get you to less loss. It won't get you to where you want to be, but it'll get you to less loss. What is it you're trying to do here? Well, you're going to run it in a joule thief, and you're going to be able to saturate the whole entire core is what you want. Then you want to be able to pull the energy off at any point in that core in order to get an over unity effect. You're going to want to balance the front capacitance bank with the back capacitance bank. And once you do that in a rodent coil, then things start to run smooth. They no longer have a lot of heat in the system at all. As a matter of fact, you cool down the system. You're going to start cooling it to the point where it starts interacting with its environment and becomes a capacitor to ground, because you're going to resonate two sides of that rodent coil, and you're going to get this thing to pull in the negative. Then it's going to cool down, and then you're going to have a very beautiful thing going on. You're going to pull environmental energy into your coil, and you're definitely getting over unity. And you're getting usable energy out because you understood the correct capacitors to use in your cap bank. Funny how that works, huh? Let me just tell you, there's very few that understand that effect in that coil. That's why there's a lot of people that says, I looked into the Bedini motor and it can't work. Well, why not? Because once you put energy to the system, you go, hold on. You're not putting energy to the system. You realize that, right? Oh, no. Yeah, you are. Well, that's where you failed. Pulling the negative. Much different understanding. Much different way that it works. Spark gaps help in conversion. It's able to do exactly what your capacitor is doing when you put the screwdriver across the top and sparking it. It's allowing the energy to transfer to usable energy right there. You spark it, doesn't do anything for you, but it makes a big spark on the capacitor. The spark gap itself, when you put it into negative energy, will start to convert and add energy to it because it likes to pull the environment in. So it'll start adding amperage to your field. That's a good effect. You definitely can use that to your advantage. We look at other effects, and it doesn't change much in a pulse motor when you go to run it. You still have to convert the energy. It's going to be the same as the Bedini motor. Pulse motor is going to run the same way. Energy, like from a Corona motor, can be converted? Yes, same way. Can you just hook an antenna up to the sky and pull an energy from it into your system? Yes, you can. Can you do it from the ground? Yes, you can. What's the most efficient way to do it? It's creating a Tesla coil in order to make an energy pump. Run it on the negative side. You can pull in the energy much faster. Cap it before it goes into the coil. You got yourself a pretty nice system there. Once you understand negative energy and how it works, it also changes physics. Physics will not be the same once you do, because you've just changed how energy works and how things pull to each other and push to each other. Now you got to develop the math to make it work. A lot of this stuff is out there, man. A lot of negative energy stuff is out there. Bedini is one of the best to start with to understand this. As soon as you see the energy coming to the system and the spikes and things like that, you'll start to understand it. You should be able to grow and understand that fairly quickly. When you get into the rodent coil, it's no different. It's going to work in the same way. You're going to be able to pull the energy through the system. Once you understand how to pull the negative energy through the system, man, you're good. So what happens when you put a negative energy through the system in a coil system? Well, if it's two coils wrapped 180 out from each other, or just the rodent coil the way it's normally wrapped, you can resonate that with one another. Resonance is basically the frequency that goes into the wire no matter what the wrapping is that you put it in. Once you have that, then you can do another one and match it, put it in resonance. You could put it in a negative energy resonance by using the negative side of the battery to pull through that first before it goes to anything that could ever create it hot. Once you do that, then the system is pretty much set. Pulling that negative through in oscillation or resonance lowers the temperature of the rodent coil. So as you lower the temperature of the rodent coil, the heat from the surrounding area in the room tries to get into it. Therefore, you're going to amplify the amount of energy coming out of this thing. You're going to get a lot more energy out of negative energy spikes than you think you do. This is stuff that they give away for free. They ground it out. When you're paying your energy bill, just realize that they're grounding out part of your energy. Not like they don't know it. They spark out the energy before it comes to your power system, goes over high voltage line, which then comes in and takes what would be like a bit, which is a three-phase transformer, and then they convert the energy from that into normal power. Power company already uses this stuff. Already uses this stuff. Now we just got to use it to our advantage. Anybody who says the Bedini motor didn't work, either they didn't build it or they don't understand. And don't get me wrong, it's not bad not to understand negative energy. Most people wouldn't. There's no reason. Nothing in your life works on it really. Everything's working on positive energy. So why would you be forced to understand it? Well, that's why you do a Bedini motor, so that you can start to understand the negative energy in the system itself. That's why you'd build it in the first place, because you want to know, hey, what is this other side of energy and why does it work this way? Question I have for all this stuff all the time. Why are they doing it? Why take a Tesla coil and try to run a motor? Well, because you want to see what's going to happen. You want to see if the conversion is possible. Are you going to try to run 100 motors off of this thing? God, no, you're not. But if you understand the conversion of the energy, you can start to do whatever you want. It's one of the hardest things to get across to somebody. A lot of people see the circuit, they run a joule thief, and they don't run capacitance on the other side, and they lose power. They're not gaining any power. If you have positive energy running through your system, I guarantee you have an energy loss somewhere. Unless you're using point of saturation where you connect the coil on top of it or bottom of it in order to saturate the fields that are going in it, then you might have it. But on its own, no. You have an energy loss. Pushing energy through a system which heats up really fast because of the way the wires are twisted in there, it'll start to heat up fast. So when you put in negative energy, it starts to cool down fast. You're going to get a dielectric plane sitting in the middle of that coil. You can use a geometry coil, and that's going to give you multiple dielectrics, one after another. Then it's going to build static in between your dielectrics. It's build layers. However many layers your coil is, they build 180 out from each other. So one going one way, one going the next way, static in the middle, because you're doing work against each other. because you're doing work against each other, you're getting static, you could build it out. Beautiful system. Get you a high level of energy right away. Yeah, a lot of these things out there, if you just understood the negative side of energy, you can get it. A Bedini motor is a perfect place to start with that. Perfect place. Now you get that negative spike. Now you go, you can start to learn the conversion, the capacitance needed to do it, how to pull this thing in the right way, how to maybe use it to charge a car battery when you're out in the middle of nowhere and you need it. Things like that. There's people who've done this stuff for a long time. What is it that makes it fail? Well, they start using a lot of neodymium magnets. Say a magnet's a magnet, magnet's a magnet. No, not really. Not when you're trying to pull this system because you need it to constantly run and run fast. You don't want any clogging. Even in the best neodymium setups, you're still getting it. In the regular ceramic magnets of it, you hardly ever get it. So you're going to be able to run this thing more efficiently for longer. Most of the kits I see out there, they all have neodymium magnets in them, which are great little bits, but not very good overall. You want to use the original parts he tells you to use until you understand the system. Don't think you're smarter than that guy because none of us really are. Let's face it. Like I've been doing it for a lot of years, and we're just getting into the field. So, yeah, never think that you've outsmarted the master and changed the circuit. I can tell you that right now. The first time I ran my Tesla coil and I ran it in AC, the wire that goes to it is completely wrong feeling. Okay. And you say, well, why? Because the neutral in the circuit actually hooks up to the positive side of a ZVS. The positive in the circuit, or the black wire in the circuit, actually connects to two diodes that are in reverse fashion. So they both are pointing towards the part that was plugged into the wall and not towards your system. So you're using them in opposite. What it does, it cuts out half the waves in it. It cuts out the bottom portion of it and only allows the tops so that you can get more energy when you spike it. It seems so wrong. For all the electrical engineering you get in this world, it seems 100% wrong, and it should never work. But it works perfect. That's so hard to wrap your head around. Oh, what was that? John says that video you showed me, stungy plasma crystals. Yeah. Some of that stuff, man, crystals have a lot of power, you know. Yeah, Joe, I tried to get a hold of you on the Facebook, by the way. I'll get a hold of you hopefully right after this. Hopefully nothing bad happened. Yeah, crystals are the future of everything. And it may not be in the crystal form that we see today, and it may very well be. Yeah, plasma crystals. Well, you're going to create plasma in them. Once you learn Hutchinson, you could take a Tesla coil and start up your crystals all day long. You could start up a crystal right inside by putting a null zone in the center of it, just by understanding the frequency of the crystal. Set your Tesla coil to the frequency of the crystal, and at certain distances, you could put a null zone right in the center of your crystal, and you could start it going. What it'll actually do is it'll push out all of the piezoelectricity that's in it. Think about that. Man, that's not something that every day you can find. Frequencies are everything in this world. Resonance is how you get into them. It's string theory, but resonance has to go in the beginning of it. That's why I always say it. I'm writing my own theory, man. I'll be honest with you. I'm writing resonance theory right now so that people can understand this. because it truly is the future of how everything's going to be seen in technology. Because it is quantum entanglement. Once you run the center of your entire cosmos, or whatever you want to call it, you run the entire thing from the center, and the center puts out the resonance frequency. Everything, therefore, after it is in resonance to it. It's all quantumly entangled from this center point to the furthest point in the cosmos, solar system, whatever you call the end of it, and then it'll all the way loop back to the beginning. All of it's entangled. All of it. We don't see it that way because we get very short-sighted and we just think of things on Earth. Anyway, we'll get back to Bedini here. Do a little bit more on that. I would suggest you get the aluminum capacitors in order to convert the energy. Any negative energy would do it that way. I think later on, John, we can look at the plasma crystal thing because I think that's important as well. Yeah. Some of this stuff, man, you can't make this stuff up. Once you find the truth, man, you find the truth. Negative energy is a big thing. There's a lot of negative energy in this world. Once you find it and you're able to convert it, now you have control that most people don't. Bedini is a perfect way of getting into it. Like I said before, regular batteries suck in that system because they changed how it works on there. They put a dielectric in all the holes in the batteries. And when I say about holes in the batteries, there's plates inside your batteries and there's holes in there. They're in negative energy. They build a dielectric field in that little hole. It no longer allows it to charge properly. That's what's going on in your battery. It's creating the dielectric in there. Now think about this. That's the same thing as doing in a magnet. It's creating the dielectric in the center of it. Why is that important? Because when you understand when you're getting into the dielectric, you say, oh my God. Now it starts to make sense. The dielectric is a negative energy, and the magnetism you see in a system or a high amperage is a positive. The natural side to each other, the yin, the yang. That's why they're working in this fashion. Truly unbelievable, man. You start with Bedini, and that's where you go. Start to learn the systems right. Always learn about the packets when he says it. He says it in the video where he turns on his speakers and stuff in the background, starts playing music. It's one that you normally don't find on YouTube because it'll give you a copyright strike for the music. But that's the video that's in there. He's also on a, oh man, one of those paper things that flips over. It's not the whiteboard, but it's the paper one that's like it. And he tells you this signal to look for. It's a ring. Tells you the ring. He tells you the part that amplifies, the resonance part of it that goes with it. That's an AC. And then he tells you the DC packets. Just like that is what he's doing. But we know from how to do it, it's not just that. You're swirling around the wires. You're building a double helix. That's the information bands you hide in between it. Crystals hide it in the exact same way. Yeah. A lot of this stuff, man, you could just write books on negative electricity all day long. It's so misunderstood. But it's completely essential. It's what Steinmetz drove out of your systems, by the way. What Tesla did, Steinmetz just drilled out of your system in order to make it work. He was getting too many negative energy spikes, and what would happen is it would electrocute people when they turn on the systems. So he grounded it out so that energy would dissipate into the ground instead of hurting people. That's what Steinmetz did. Once you understand that, now you can understand where to pull in that negative from. Once you read both, you understand what really happened there. A lot of frustrates me to this day. A lot of electrical engineers are going to kill the power that you want to use. That's why they have such an argument. That's why they always come on and say, I am an electrical engineer. I've been doing this a long time. And that's not the way it works. Always say it. Every time without fail. Not a video I can do in negative energy that they don't come on and say it. They're failing to understand what Steinmetz did. Steinmetz knew what he was doing. He wasn't lying to you. He knew he grounded that stuff out. Yeah. He knew it was hurting people, so he grounded it out and got rid of it so that you get the normal energy, because when you get into systems that have it, it causes havoc sometimes on all your electrical components on the other end. When you run anything that comes in, it comes in as potential. Just understand that. When you run a generator, it comes in as potential. You still have to convert it. You still have to run it through the bridge rectifier and convert it. You say, well, it comes in a sine wave. Can I just use that sine wave as AC? No. They call it dirty AC, which means it's potential. It will not run your AC system. You must convert it. You must full bridge rectify it to a DC, and then you can full bridge it again to an AC. Then it'll work properly. The two energies are not compatible. Who knew? Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you got to learn in electrical engineering, but they don't understand it because they don't teach it. They teach you to kill it, but they're not teaching you what it is. When they don't teach you what it is, you have no idea what it is. You just know to ground it. They pound in your head to ground it, ground it, ground it, ground it. Do you really know why? No. Do you really care in electrical engineering? No. You do what you're told, and they get the right answer, and you continue to do it that way. You don't sit there and go, let me pontificate on this and find out why they're doing it. No, most people don't get that far. Say it runs this way, we're going to run it this way, and that's it. Once you get into a Bedini system, you're going to realize you can't do things that way. Electrical engineering skills may hurt you in this aspect because you're not opening the system up with an open mind. You got a very closed mind, and you're not looking at it correctly. You're dogmatic in what you think. You keep doing it the same way over and over, and you're going to keep failing. And then you're going to be all frustrated and say, well, my degree says that I can do this, but your closed mind says no. If you go into it as an engineer and you have your open mind, then man, the world's your oyster. You can figure it out quickly. And a lot of people that don't understand that, it's hard to explain it to them. Not worth arguing over it. They just won't understand. And there'll be the people that don't. Nothing you could do about it. You can give the information, you can show that it works, and then you can be done with it. Anyway, that's about it, man. If you want a good starter thing and get into negative energy, build a Bedini motor. Be a great thing for you. With that said, I'll be here tomorrow morning and we'll talk with a different topic. If you guys have something in mind, you're always welcome to drop it in the chat and let me know. Other than that, I do a live show, I believe later today on Monday, and it's on my big channel. And I don't know what we're talking about yet, but we'll see. Usually I just check in on Mondays and see what people are doing and what in their projects and things like that. And then I update on my projects and what I'm working on. But I'll be here tomorrow and we'll talk about a different topic. Right on, everybody. Have yourselves a great day, and thank you very much.